Hello there and welcome back to Dukascopy TV. Today I'm joined in the studio again by Ruzanna Tarverdyan to discuss the panel which was convened by UNITAR and the Ethos Institute one day after Rio 20. So Ruzanna, first of all, can you tell me what the purpose of the event was and what was discussed there?
Actually, after the UN conference on sustainable development has officially been closed and the final document has been adopted, quite a few thinkers and major stakeholders decided to get together and decide how are they going to take forward the decisions and agreement reflected in the final document. And on that occasion, UNITAR jointly with Ethos Foundation initiated a panel where they called if there is a need for a new social contract to discuss how they will be able to implement the ideas reflected in the final document.
And Ruzanna, can you tell me about this call for a new social contract and about its objectives?
Actually, if we look at the definition for strategies for sustainable development, it implies a coordinated set of participatory and continuously improving process of analysis, debate, capacity strengthening, planning and investment, which seeks to integrate the short and long-term economic, social and environmental objectives of society through mutually supportive approaches wherever possible and managing trade-offs where this is not possible. As we see from the definition, even though sustainable development objectives have been identified to be an alternative objective of national and development policies, in practice there will always be conflict between those simultaneous pursuit of the three objectives. In that respect, the only legitimate mechanism where they can be implemented simultaneously are interrelated mechanisms of policy dialogue and consensus building, whereby different stakeholders can discuss and agree wherever possible about mutually supportive approaches and make the necessary trade-off when they are not possible. This in itself is a clear call for social contract because judicial systems will not provide for legitimate trade-offs.
And what are the main challenges facing this call for new social contract?
So implementation of the new social contract will imply development of national and international policy frameworks that are holistic, based on the principles of democracy, gender justice, and given the entire process between developed and developing countries, large number of issues have to be addressed. If we look at how the project and program level, donors and developing countries have to mobilize their resources and move towards more local procedures to be able to address small national priorities, there must be large number of, and there must be a need for standardization and harmonization of ongoing practices and procedures that will help developing countries to implement the policies in their respective countries. And another perhaps interesting challenge will be to eliminate the tying of foreign aid, whereby more opportunities will be created for developing countries to implement their own national programs. And social contracts as such has to be actually done in all different levels, at the global level, whereby global decision makers will agree upon their respective roles on implementation at the national levels, at the community levels, and this is really a huge task, a very serious challenge. In that respect, it's important to outline also the need of the new institutions and enormous need of capacity building and capacity development, because the entire global and national societies have to start operating in a new way and also introduce new paradigm whereby economic and social issues will be addressed within one single framework.
And at the event, Mr. Steiner said that the document of the Rio 20 outcome was like a half-written cookbook, as some recipes and ingredients were actually missing. However, he said some certain groups could find opportunities in it. How do you feel?
Actually, the final document does not differ very much from other UN documents, final documents. It's more a political declaration whereby it's natural that there are only specific descriptions of what has to be done, and when it comes to actual implementation, that has already to be done in practice by different systems, not necessarily at the conference. You might be aware that only during past 2 weeks the Secretary General has already created a new panel on beyond 2015, where the whole challenges of sustainable development will be discussed and agreed. Similarly, recognizing the challenges of sustainable development solutions network has been created, which is an invitation to whole global community to bring their viewpoints to open discussion, acknowledging that this is an enormous, huge global challenge, and everybody should have an opportunity to participate and make their voice heard. Having said that, it's normal that in a document on Rio 20, they could have only underlined specific objectives, what needs to be done, and then they will make how to do it in practice.
And finally, Ruzanna, what issues were raised at this debate that affects the global economy and the world of finance?
Actually, according to some information sources, during Rio Plus 20, there had been pledges for $531 billion towards addressing the financial needs for sustainable development. Similarly, there have been more than 700 new commitments whereby different organizations, different private sector representatives and individuals have made their pledges towards addressing and helping the United Nations to address the challenges of sustainable development. When we look at the OECD countries, unfortunately the data available was only for 2008. If the sustainable development issues have to be integrated into practices, then the first thing that has to be happen is to incorporate it into government procurement procedures. And if we look at the Netherlands, for example, they have about 15% of their GDP is in the government procurement. And if they start from tomorrow incorporating the criteria of sustainable procurement into their practices, then this is a huge, great potential contributing to the achievement of sustainable development goals. Along with developed countries, when they are providing if they incorporate sustainable procurement into their practices, this will be an enormous potential of helping sustainable development goals to be met in practice. Similarly, development community led by the World Bank Group, if they start incorporating sustainable procurement practices into their operations, I explicitly would like to note I do not mean that they will have to come up with new conditionalities for providing loans and grants to their recipient countries, which they are so much in need of them for meeting their needs. However, if only in 2011 World Bank Group committed 57 billion in forms of grants, credits and loans and guarantees, if each of the dollars spent provides sustainable development, then this is actually the real way of providing grounds and basis for achievement of sustainable development goals. If India, Mexico, Brazil, Indonesia, Argentina, for example, are amongst the first 10 IBRD borrowers, if these countries start using the development assistance by ensuring sustainable development, then this is the real way of achieving the outcomes.
Thank you very much, Ruzanna.
Thank you for this opportunity again.
And as always, thank you for watching Dukascopy TV. My colleague Monica Gibson will be back to look at the challenges facing the employment process since the crisis, so do stay tuned for that. Goodbye.